Hey there and welcome back to Rimworlds. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld adventure in the Cold Bog with the Cult of Jingz. And let's get right to it. Last time we left off after what was a bit of a milestone episode, as our colony of Liviana has finally secured the mysterious Horn of Edmo. And the next milestone might be just around the corner, as we are getting very close to maxing out our ideology development points once more, so we will likely evolve the Cult of Jingz again very soon. Until then, our colony mostly goes about their business, and we can watch as winter is slowly creeping in, the temperatures are dropping below zero, the first snow is starting to fall, and it won't be long before the Cold Bog is once again covered all in white. And so, while we still have some animals around to hunt, let's do that, although we are quickly interrupted by Coco and our latest recruit Freya. Freya is still not a believer in the Cult of Jingz, and Coco's attempt to change that has led to a social fight, albeit one that is pretty uneventful, as Freya just seems to run away from Coco here, and then the two decide against duking it out. Well, at least nobody got injured, and a few hours later we can watch as Freya joins Specs, Maniac and Chutney at the Anima Tree, which is now once again ready to give out another Psycaster rank. We actually had a small community poll about this, and while Maniac was the favorite among you guys, the most convincing arguments were however made in favor of Freya, as her pacifist nature otherwise leaves her pretty useless in the fight. For the rest of the evening though, no one will go through the ritual, and instead we can celebrate another inspiration, as Reddini's good mood gives her a guaranteed recruitment attempt the next time we take a prisoner. Her ideology conversion powers, on the other hand, those are not guaranteed, and so we get a bit closer to converting Freya here, but sadly it's not enough. Still, on the next morning, Freya can already receive her first Psycaster rank, with Specs, Maniac and Chutney joining for moral support and to regrow some of that anima grass. While that is going on, we are also constructing some extra torches in our tree temple. The open roof construction is causing temperatures to drop dangerously close to zero, and that puts our Devil Strand mushrooms in danger. And with plenty of wood available to burn, we don't need to risk that. Speaking of dangers, here is the next one, and it looks like we won't be able to avoid it. 47 tribespeople have arrived at our gates, and they are intent on smashing their way into the base, which could get challenging, not to mention that we are outnumbered roughly 5 to 1. And so, while we hope that Freya can finish her ritual before the horde arrives, everyone else already takes cover behind some trees, and Coco is also bringing the bears with her to defend us. Our granite wall then doesn't stand for long, but for long enough, Freya finishes the ritual and learns the Pain Block Psycast, which won't really be that useful at the moment, so let's have her grab a bite to eat to keep her mood in check, while the rest of Liviana is already taking aim at the first melee enemies. For the first few moments, that is actually going pretty well, but eventually the bulk of the enemy force gets closer, and even though we have already killed 7 of them without taking any injuries, that leaves 40 still eager to smash our heads in, so let's go for the tactical retreat. While most of our colonists now run to what is technically the wrong side of our defensive installation, Coco and her bears draw some of the enemy fire, and of course that does not go unpunished. 1 shot, 1 kill, and brown bear Ignacio falls dead. He wasn't even fully grown yet, but his sacrifice allows everyone else to safely make it behind cover. Our enemies are now likely going to split into 2 groups, one that is coming for our colonists and one that is going to rampage through our village. Still, I would much rather lose some buildings than some people, and this will make the fight a lot easier, at least that's what I hope. As you can see, there is also not a whole lot of cover available for our attackers, which definitely plays in our favor. Still, the occasional hit is simply unavoidable with this many enemies. Our main Psycaster Specs is also doing an excellent job with crowd control, and still, this is definitely looking pretty damn dicey at the moment. And then it happens, and I guess it had to happen at some point. After taking 1 too many hits, Jack now goes down, just as we are about to drive off the last enemies in the area. The other half of the tribespeople, meanwhile, is causing havoc in the village and seems to be on their way to our temple. High time to intervene. So, with most of our colonists already injured, we are once again relocating, this time across the river, while Reddini stays behind to administer some first aid to Jekna. Once more then, we take cover behind some trees and open fire, while our enemies seem only somewhat interested in returning it, and have instead begun picking a fight with our dryads. Ultimately, this works to our advantage, as it thins out the numbers focusing on us, and so after a tough fight that probably could have gone either way, we drive off the attackers and save our village, at least most of it. In terms of injuries, things are looking somewhat serious, but not desperately so. Jekna is in a bit of trouble, but already being tended to. Armando should probably also receive some attention soon, and Freya, well, she has tried to avoid the enemies after her meal, but as you can see, only with limited success, so we should get her patched up quickly as well. Apart from our brown bear Ignacio, we thankfully have not lost any other animals. Some of our dryads are injured, and some pretty heavily, and Dr. Thunder also took some light hits, but this should all be manageable. As we head back into the village, one last enemy is quickly taken care of, but not without landing a small blow against Thoraya, and then it's time for some first aid, and once again our lack of a competent doctor shows. Reddini and Coco take care of the dryads first, just to stabilize them so that they can enter their healing pods for a full recovery, and then it's time to save our colonists, starting with Jekna. Tuk, meanwhile, is also stabilizing one of the fallen attackers, but more on that later, while Freya is being tended to by Specs and her extraordinary medical skill of 2. Unfortunately, time is of the essence here and we can't be picky. In the evening then, with most people already bandaged up, a mad hare presents a welcome alternative to the previous challenge, and we are also already starting to repair some of the damages around the village, so things are looking up. The hare is then quickly killed with one swift strike from Thoraya's Thrombohorn, while Tuk carries our prisoner to their cell, and shortly after, Thoraya even experiences an inspiration, allowing her to successfully tame the next animal. Perhaps we can use that for something interesting. For the moment though, the list of animals on the map is rather short, and the nightly arrival of a war merchant demands our attention. The caravan is quite large, so perhaps they have a few useful bits and pieces for sale. As the traders arrive in the village in the early morning hours, we send Reddini out to take a look at their inventory, and while they have some walks for sale, we won't buy them, as they are a little more difficult to keep than bears, and all 3 are males, so we won't be able to breed them. Instead, we are selling off our enemies' weapons, drugs, and a bunch of other useless stuff for over 800 silver, and we'll leave it at that. Perhaps the next caravan brings something more interesting. Shortly after then, Freya suffers a mental break and decides to go on a slaughtering spree, and it looks like she is running towards our dryads. Luckily though, Reddini can catch her just barely in time to avoid further bloodshed. Our Woodmaker dryad survives, and Freya is restrained for now. Conveniently enough, this will now also allow Reddini to convert her much more easily, at least once Freya wakes up again. Another trade opportunity then appears with the arrival of a lone contract miner, and while she makes her way over to us, we continue to repair the damages around Leviano. While we do that, Reddini also successfully converts Freya, and with that, all villagers are now firm believers in the Cult of Jingz. Most of the injuries are also healing quickly, but still we are picking up some additional proper medicine from our visitor. I think a small stockpile of higher quality stuff is never a bad thing to have. And speaking of higher quality, our next quest here could be the source of some Glitterworld medicine, as the Empire wants us to provide a small crew of 5 people to assault a pirate base. We would only need to defeat 4 enemies at the site, plus turrets of course, and I think that is manageable, so let's keep this one in mind, but wait for everyone to be fully healed before we embark. In the meantime, we are constructing a new building between our Muffalo Pen and our Bear Cave, because I think it is time to give our colonists a bit more space. This here will be the new home for Chutney, who can now finally move out of Armando's clothing workshop. And while we get everything ready for him to move in, a psychic soothe also strikes the Cold Bog, and all females are put in a much better mood for the time being, certainly a welcome reward after surviving the raid from earlier. Speaking of which, the only one sadly not surviving it is Brown Bear Ignacio, who will now receive a proper forest burial. The Cult of Jingz does actually have a ritual for this, but unfortunately it can only be performed with colonists, but still everyone assembles near our Gauranland trees now, as Ignacio's master Coco buries him in the ground surrounded by trees. I think that's the way the Cult of Jingz prefers it. On the following morning, just after Tuk experiences a shoot frenzy inspiration, we are now overhauling Reddini's and Armando's small wooden shack, so that the tailoring area as well as their bed are now in the same place. In the background, you will from time to time see some of our people hunt small animals like rats and raccoons. With winter already in full effect, we will have to take what we can get. Armando has also put up a marble slab bed, and because of its excellent quality, it even has some artwork on it, the portrayal of a pool to be exact. Maybe Armando would like to sleep in a waterbed instead. In any case, his new home is slowly taking shape, and overall, considering how the episode started, things are going pretty well right now. Specs then receives another inspiration, this time for a trade price bonus, and just like that, the next night is already here. In the early hours of the next morning, Freya makes a full recovery, and so Jegna is now the only injured colonist left, but I'm sure she will follow suit shortly. Chutney's new home is also fully floored now, and we are now also constructing a fueled smithy in Armando's and Reddini's home, because I think it might be time to make ourselves some slightly more protective gear. I have run the numbers a few times, and ultimately having one suit of heavy plate armor is not actually going to be that much better compared to 2 clothing layers of less protective gear, like cape and leather armor. In the end, it mostly depends on armor quality and materials. Still, our current clothing setup is not really ideal, and I would not be opposed to the idea of having a few suits of plate armor in storage, just in case. For the moment though, we are not starting any new crafting projects, and instead see Jegna make a full recovery as well, and that means it is time for the next ritual. Now a full member of the Cult of Jingz, Freya does of course still need her ritual scar, and so, once again accompanied by the fantastic music from Eric Murray, our entire colony assembles in our tree temple to watch Reddini make the cut. Jegna also receives yet another inspiration, this time for creativity, meaning the next item she makes should be a high quality one. By the way, for the next ideology reform, I think we will increase the scarification aspect a bit more, so that everyone wants to have multiple scars. Otherwise, I fear that the ideology stuff kind of moves into the background more and more, and that would be a shame. Now, the ritual scar is placed on Freya's nose, so Reddini's preference for cutting people in the face continues, and with that, the ritual is almost complete. In the end, it ends up satisfying for everyone, resulting in a small +1 mood bonus, and so the entire Cult of Jingz can now happily go to bed. On the next morning, Reddini starts the conversion process of our no longer unconscious prisoner, who we will indeed try to recruit to our village. Until then, I'll keep her stats and traits a surprise, but I think she will fit right in. The next few hours then remain fairly uneventful, the psychic soothe comes to an end, and Reddini's next attempt in the afternoon also neatly coincides with our prisoner's full recovery. Most of the afternoon is spent hunting, cooking, and of course meditating, with Armando also moving over to the crafting spot in the common room for the production of a few high-quality great bows. After receiving those 2 masterwork bows in the first episodes, the quality of our weapons is actually stuck on normal for most of our colonists, and with higher qualities providing bonuses to things like damage and accuracy, this is an easy way to give us another edge in combat, and I think we definitely need it. In the middle of the night then, our prisoner has a mental break and goes berserk. Honestly, who can blame her? But of course, this calls for a swift response. Chutney, Reddini and Maniac line up in front of the prison to hopefully beat our prisoner into submission quickly, and in a 3-on-1 assault she doesn't stand much of a chance. Reddini suffers a few bruises, but nothing that we can't patch up, but first let's ensure that our recruitment project does not bleed out on us. Jacknar's creativity inspiration is then used, and some might say wasted, on a marble sculpture, producing a masterwork result. The image depicts Armando crafting a cape in his workshop, and its beauty rating of 680 will now spice up his and Reddini's home. For the rest of the day, things then remain thankfully quiet, and so we rejoin our colony in the evening as we begin another festival of trees. We only need 2 more ideology development points to reform the Cult of Jingz, and this should hopefully allow us to get at least one of those. Not to mention that with a good result, we also have a 50% chance of obtaining a new recruit. And considering the size of the raid at the beginning of the episode, I think we are definitely not done growing just yet, so let's see how this goes. Alright, an unforgettable festival of trees that is even better than I had expected, as we can in fact reform the Cult of Jingz right now, and we also receive a colony-wide mood bonus of +10. Now, we'll talk a bit more about reforming the ideology in just a second. For now, we are also informed that we did indeed attract a new recruit, a Shaman of Shadows. That certainly sounds interesting. Before we accept him into our ranks, however, let's quickly watch Reddini go to work on our prisoner once again. But afterwards, I think it's time to meet the newest member of the Cult of Jingz. As always, he will now receive a new name chosen from the list of Patreon supporters in the naming rights tier and above, and this time we are going with Kevin, after longtime patron Kevin Clark. And Kevin's stats are, well, quite interesting. He is unfortunately incapable of violence, hauling and firefighting, not to mention that he is also a slow learner and a misogynist, so we'll see how well he integrates into our village. Still, he does have a high double passion medical skill, so I think we have finally found Liviana's primary doctor, and at least his social skill should be useful in trading, converting and recruiting as well. His plant skill of 8 is also technically enough to make him a plant specialist, something that we should start having very soon anyway, so we definitely have options here, although they are admittedly somewhat limited. Now, health-wise, Kevin could of course do better than asthma and the first signs of a smoke leaf addiction, but he could also do much worse. For now, he can put on some proper tribal clothing and take in the new surroundings, while we talk a bit about the future of the Cult of Jingz. We are not going to reform our ideology right here and now, because once again I would like to hear your thoughts on what we should do next. We can now select our third ideology meme, and there are definitely some interesting ones still available here. Raider, for example, was already a popular choice last time, when we eventually ended up going with Pain is Virtue, but there are of course a few more candidates out there that could fit our playstyle and still offer something new. I'm not going to list the effects of each one here, but I'll leave a link in the description below where you can read up on them all. In any case, I would be very happy if you could let me know what you think we should pick next, and what you think will keep the series exciting for many more episodes. In the meantime, I think we have reached a good point to make the cut for today, so let's wrap things up with the usual aerial view of our colony, and also with some new fan art. Called The Tree Speaker, this lovely piece of art definitely captures the vibe of our colony quite well, I think, and if you want to send in some artwork as well, the easiest way to do that is to just email me at pete@petecomplete.com. I am very much looking forward to what else this series and its talented viewers can come up with. For today though, let's make the cut right here. If you enjoyed the episode, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up, and if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.